Hi class, this is Katherine Carson and I will be overviewing chapters 10 and 11 in Storybranding by Jim Signorelli. Chapter 10 deals with using archetypal analysis, and chapter 11 begins our study on the brand's outer layer. So let's begin with chapter 10, which is using archetypal analysis. In this chapter, we're introduced to the concept of archetypes and how the identification of a brand's archetype will enable us to have the right language and frame of reference. Or as the book says, it will help us to bring the brand's meaning out of hiding. You'll remember from previous chapters that the goal of story branding is connecting the brand's inner layer to the prospect. The archetype analysis presented in the chapter we're reviewing will function as a tool to help the brand identify the makeup of its inner layer. Remember that the inner layer is that deep meaning or the belief of the brand. It's the inner soul of the brand. So let's answer the question, what is an archetype? Psychologist Carl Jung used the term archetype to describe universal behavioral patterns in all stories, regardless of their cultural or historical period. He suggested that these patterns were repeated behaviors that span across all walks of human life. So there's many different types of archetypes, and many sources list several possibilities for these archetypes. But our book focused narrowing down on 12, and this will help us get to the heart of our brand's meaning. These are all available for you in chapter 10 to look at, but I'm going to briefly overview each of these archetypes. First, the purist. The purist is wholesome, highly ethical, and approaches life by being good and doing good. Second, the pioneer. This is the adventurer who wants life experiences above all. They have that wanderlust for life. Next, the entertainer is the person at the center of attention who has a flair for fun. They're humorous and they love living in the moment. The conqueror. This person meets challenges head on without fear and relentlessly overcomes them. The wizard lives for mystery, thrill, and novelty. He works to make dreams a reality. The protector puts everyone else first and cares, loves, and supports at all cost. The seducer is indulgent and seems desirability and romance are its top priority. The Imagineer. This person lives in the world of ideation. The Emperor is the powerhead, the leader, the chief of the tribe. The Rebel hates convention, always pushes the envelope, even sometimes to the shocking and outrageous. The Source is the one with all the knowledge, who lives to learn. And finally, the Straight Shooter. This is the one with all the candor. They believe in just keeping it real. So like I said, these are examples that the book gives us, and there are perhaps many more that you can find. These archetypes will become our story's hero of our brand story. So how would a brand arrive at a brand archetype, or how would they figure that out? Well, first, remember, we're seeking inner layer uniqueness, but at the same time, we don't want to have competing archetypes or the feeling that we must choose just one of those 12. This is simply a framework or a tool for us to aid in the process of identifying that inner brand meaning. It's perfectly okay, even encouraged, to use several of the archetypes even to create a new archetype. You're getting at that brand hero here. For example, I work for a place called the Baptist State Convention of North Carolina. We are the hub of all of the churches in North Carolina, all the Southern Baptist churches. So when we define our archetype, that person has some pretty unique characteristics, one of which include that strong belief in helping others. And this characteristic sounds a lot like that of the protector that I just described to you. But that doesn't necessarily mean our brand archetype is solely just that one. So the bottom line takeaway for you is that archetypes help us to provide the language, the insight, and comparison in order to relate to the brand as a person. This ultimately helps us identify the brand's value system. So, a question for you. What archetype do you most strongly relate to, and why? And how has this maybe shaped your brand loyalty, if at all? Now, building off of our understanding of how archetypes work as a framework or a tool to help us to develop that inner layer, and this inner layer is what is imperative for making that deep connection with prospects, let's move into the next chapter, chapter 11. Here we're going to look at the brand's outer layer. A brand's outer layer explains how the product functions and how it functions in order to give the prospect a tool to deal with a particular obstacle or perhaps achieve a personal goal. This is when we get into how our brand's inner layer of values manifest through products, through features, or benefits. So the outer layer are the products, the features, or the benefits. It's what a prospect would maybe witness or observe the effects of. It would be how the brand behaves, what it offers, what it does. In storytelling, the plot is what we see unfold. It's how the storyline is shaped to overcome obstacles or deal with problems. The theme, on the other hand, is the deeper meaning of the story. Some would say the moral of the story. But remember, a story can't be all theme without plot, or vice versa. The power of storytelling is to balance both the theme and the plot. Just remember that the brand's goal is to get to level 4 affiliation with prospects. So the inner layer, or the meaning, is how that affiliation happens. The outer layer, or the how that we're talking about, is still very important at meeting needs and offering that functional satisfaction. This happens especially during the launch of a brand, when price comparison is important to the prospect, or when risks are high. Remember, the outer layer's role is not primary, but it's supportive. It helps to open the door to a deeper connection along the pathway to level 4 prospect affiliation. But as the book points out, source credibility still has to be earned. The outer layer needs to be cautious of hypocrisy or irrelevance. We've all seen a brand claiming its inner layer believes a certain way, and then something happens and the outer layer doesn't prove that claim. If there's not a balance or an alignment between those two things, then prospects, or you or I as a prospect, are going to quickly see through that and withdraw faith in that brand. So returning to the archetype discussion from chapter 10, if your brand archetype is, say, one of like the purist, your outer layer must always maintain that posture of kindness, grace, truthfulness, purity above all things, and avoid any appearance at all of unethical behavior of any kind. Otherwise, the prospect is going to lose faith in the brand, and credibility with that prospect is going to fade very quickly. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this. I know it was a lot, and I hope you learned a lot. I know I certainly did. To recap the question that I posed about archetypes, I'll end with this. Which archetype, or a variety of archetypes, do you most strongly relate to, and why? And how has this shaped your brand loyalty, if at all?